Go get some green lights.
Talk to everybody from.
Aloha, or you got your Hawaii.
It's financial, they didn't get the memo.
Oh, Thursday. Thursday. I'm excited that we do this experience. Yes, we do the pledge of allegiance and lost. What we're supposed to be reading.
Yeah.
Well, I've been listening.
That's good.
Like these lives. You and your cultural allegiance.
welcome. We will do the continuation of the public hearing. So I'm gonna read my spiel. Sorry, but you all, I love saying it as much as you like hearing it, so. So now is the time specified for the city council to conduct a public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider the following matter. Consideration to file 01-2025 adopt an updated comprehensive plan replacement development code and zoning map in accordance with the technical assistant grant received from the DLCD. The substantive criteria upon which the city council will base its decision in this matter are contained in 7-1-6 plan and implementation measure review and 7-1-7 plan amendment applications and 7-1-8 plan amendment, 9-1-6 zoning and development code administration amendments, 9-1-7 condition for granting amendments, 8-1-2 subdivision administration amendments. A public hearing is required by law and certain rules apply. First and foremost, you must be recognized by the chair in order to speak and present testimony. When recognized by the chair, please proceed to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. The hearing is required by law to be recorded. Generally, the public hearing procedure is as follows. So it is the recording. Okay. I didn't see you turn it on, so I usually see Dave work.
I did it, yeah.
Okay. Prior. Yeah. She's a little smaller than Dave. Prior to the public hearing, a determination will be made of the qualifications of the council members and allow for challenges from the audience. I will open the public hearing with the staff report. The purpose of the staff report at this point is to further identify the applicable criteria of the case being considered and to provide background information on the case. Next, there will be testimony from the proponents, those in favor of the application. Next, there will be testimony from the opponents, those not in favor of the application. And next, there will be testimony from anyone else who wishes to offer testimony or ask questions. Then, to honor the right of rebuttal, we will again hear from those in favor of the application. To expedite the hearing, the council members may ask questions of the person as they testify. When this process has been concluded, we will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. During the hearing, some important standards apply. First, those who testify must hold their testimony to the decision criteria. As in all land use hearings, there are a complete set of rules, procedures, and criteria we must follow. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the council members and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Third, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with details specific enough to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in this report. Fourth, prior to the conclusion of the public hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. If such a request is made, the law states the council must grant the request by either continuing the hearing to a time and date of 7 days from the date of the initial hearing, or the record must be kept open for a period of at least 7 days. These are the rules. Are there any questions? Okay. So, questions addressed to the city council. Have any members of the city council had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias, which would prevent you from rendering an impartial decision on this matter? Maria?
No.
Jamie?
No.
Tammy?
No.
No. And no. Do you want to get your spiel now? This is
I have to announce that I may have potential conflicts of interest. Have a water business at Sesame County outside of town where we sell water products. Have 3 rentals in town, have a home in town, with some acreage. I should have mentioned that last time. And we also have a Fort Henrietta. And I don't think this is a potential trial, but I'm going to answer it just in case. We also, we have an Oregon honey farm in the Utah County. It's also in Sandfield. It's not in the city. And we have a meat there too. I think that's all.
Okay. And would that prevent you from rendering it a public meeting?
No.
Does anyone in the audience wish to challenge the qualifications of any members of the council? Okay. Then at this time, I'll open the public hearing. And may we have the staff report? Also, let the record show that Berlin and Jesse are not here. Berlin is still on vacation here. And Jesse, they have illness. So she.
Okay, someone hope, I don't know if this is gonna, oh,
There
maybe
you
it
go.
is.
Gotta get it close.
Well, this is so far down from the top so loud. Staff recommend that the council adopt the updated zoning map as amended from the previous hearings, with exceptions of the new property acquired by the school district doesn't match the school district zoning. Use zones on the map such public spaces, city hall, fire hall, school, parks, cemetery, golf course, don't have development code that defines allowable uses and standards. Staff recommend that the council adopt the updated language in the comprehensive plan. Staff recommend that the code be further amended to include language for allowable uses in public spaces, cemetery, golf course, city hall, school, parks, and add language to support the residential commercial zoning added to the map. That is all we have tonight. When Dave returns, he can attempt to answer questions with regards to the report.
Very well. Okay, so, thank you, Amanda.
Can I just read this part again, because I kind of got lost.
Yeah, and I think we'll definitely have some discussion.
Staff recommend that the council adopt the updated zoning map as amended from previous hearings, with exceptions of the new property acquired by the school district doesn't match the school district zoning. Use zones on the map such public spaces, city hall, fire hall, school, parks, cemetery, golf course. Don't have development code that defines allowable uses and standards. Just the first one, right?
Yes, so we can talk about that briefly right now, and then we'll discuss it more as a
Okay.
council when we get to it. Because I did talk to Dave about this 15 minutes before I left work. So it's been one of those days for Dave. But Carla and the DLCD got to looking at our current code zoning map, and we decided that we weren't going to change the zones. We were gonna leave them as is and deal with them on a separate one-on-one basis down the road, or however that may play out. But for the purposes of this hearing, we weren't going to make any changes to the zones. Like it was proposed to change the church and the fire hall to to commercial or residential, the school to residential, things like that. What has come from the review of our current code is that there's no definition or very light definition of allowable uses in those zones, like the school zone, the public, I can't remember what we call it, public use zone or something. I'd have to dig through here and find the zoning map, but and so the school would not be able to expand based on our current zoning map. So if the school was to add on, like they did before, they shouldn't have been allowed to add on to the school under our current code. Because there's nothing in our current code that allows that to happen. The fire hall should not have been added onto based on our current code. And this is just what Dave told me when Dave gets here. Maybe he give us a better explanation. But that is something that we need to look at fixing. And it would have been fixed if we had changed the zone to the proposed zones, because the proposed code would have allowed those things to happen. But since our old, and the cemetery is another piece, I know Jeannie, you're interested in this. When the cemetery annexes or gets more ground, they're not gonna be able to do anything with it because of that public use type
And
zone.
left of money, or district.
So we could, we have the ability to fix it here in this hearing process, we just have to add some language to that code that allows, for those uses in those zones. Is that, it's kind of confusing, so yeah.
Yeah, we could do, if the cemetery got the money, but if we didn't change it at this time and we waited to change it with an overall zoning years to come, we could do a public hearing and change the cemetery. And an individual.
You're correct, and
Yeah.
we could, and that has been discussed, because we knew the cemetery was gonna be, we knew the cemetery was going to be. But what we didn't realize is after DLCD got picked up for this, oh, wonderful, here's Dave. We didn't realize that the school and the fire hall and the church and all of that, apparently aren't allowed to add on, so the church wanted to add to it, they would not be allowed under current. They could, and each place could do it, but that process takes, as you know, sometimes takes a long time, so that there, when we get to discussion, we could talk about maybe fixing it now, or leaving it as is and fixing it on an individual basis later, so that, but that's kind of where we're.
Are you talking about, I'm sorry, are you talking about the zoning versus development code?
Yes, and I just explained to him exactly what you told me on the phone, and so when we get into discussion, then let's get better clarification on that, because I think there's gonna be more questions, and right now we're in the step.
Good.
But.
I'm ready to answer some of it, we're gonna have to work with Carla or somebody on, because there's quite a bit of a lift to make it, so with the zoning going backwards, we're back to the way you wanted it, the development code needs to be updated to match that, because zoning and development code have to be cohesive, they can't be like this, they have to be the same.
Right.
So if you're gonna be residential, then everything in your development code for residential has to say for that zone, this is what you can build, this is what you can do, these are all the allowable uses, these are all the variances, da, 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 da. So that's how that works. It's how it's always worked, but ours is such a mess as it is, so it'd be good to try to straighten that up.
Yeah. So anyway, I was just kind of running through the scenario real quick, and I think when we get into discussion, we can kind of come to hopefully an agreement on how we want to move forward with it. Tackle it during this hearing process or tackle it later.
I have a couple suggestions when we get there, when we're ready to talk about it.
Sure, perfect. It's good to see you, Dave, by the way.
Thank you very much.
It's good to see everybody, by the way, so. Including Michael W. So at this time, does anyone wish to testify in favor of the application? Okay, does anyone wish to testify in opposition to the application? If you want to make a suggestion, let's do it at the question, the next one. Because if it's not really opposed to the whole thing, then we'll just do it at that. Okay. Okay. Does anyone wish to testify that are not in favor or opposition, or that would like to ask a question? Gina? So state your name and address.
Gina Saber, 229 Marble Street.
You have a letter.
Oh, I do have a letter. I'll read it.
After she's done, you need to do that.
It doesn't really have any criteria that it's.
Really, that's up to you.
I'll read it just for.
Good.
Because they took the time. Sorry, Gina, I haven't even started the time yet, but I apologize for that.
Sorry about
that. So you're all.
I've been hearing concerns from residents about the proposed requirements that people must fit 5 out of 10 design elements when building a home. Many feel this starts to resemble an HOA. and that isn't something Echo residents want or expect. I understand and respect the intention behind it. The goal is to prevent unusual or extreme structures like the dome-style building that went up in Hermiston. But we don't need an HOA-style checklist to stop something like that. There are much simpler and much more direct ways to address the concern. One option is to add a short line in the code saying that residential buildings must be a conventional residential form and that dome or spherical structures are not allowed in residential zones. Another option is to require traditional roof forms like gable, hip, or shed roofs, and clearly state that fully dome-shaped roofs are not permitted. Either of these ideas would solve the problem without forcing every homeowner to pick 5 design elements. So I would ask the council to consider scaling that requirement back. Another concern I'm hearing is about metal shops. Metal shops are very common in Echo and practical for rural living. At the last meeting, there seemed to be confusion about whether metal buildings would still be allowed. I would ask that this section be written very clearly so future city managers cannot misinterpret it. Clear wording now prevents problems later. I would also like to ask that the footprint limits stay at 50%. With the small lots in the older part of town, that flexibility is important. A lower limit would place unnecessary restriction on homeowners who are simply trying to use their property reasonably. Another point is landscaping. I do not feel it is the city's role to tell residents how they must landscape their private yards. People in Echo have always maintained their yards in ways that fit their budget, lifestyle, and our rural environment. Most residents feel these choices should remain personal. And even though I haven't read every section myself, I have been hearing a number of complaints about added permits that people feel are unnecessary. If new permits are being created, I would ask that the council look closely at whether they truly serve a needed purpose or if they simply add extra steps and extra costs for homeowners. I also want to emphasize how important it is that Goal 7, Policy 4 remain in the comprehensive plan with the rewording we discussed earlier. The updated wording helps protect the city from liability. That Echo's longstanding intent is preserved in a way that is fair, practical, and defensible. Keeping this policy in place is essential for helping safeguard both residents and the city as we move forward. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Okay, anyone else wish to testify that are not in favor or opposition or that would like to ask questions? Okay, so what was that? Yeah, was all right. In favor. That's what we're doing, correct? What do you think? Right now? Or have questions right now? Mr. Dudley.
My daddy blocks 127. I didn't testify in favor because honestly, I'm a little lost. And I think many of us are. There's so many changes, just discussing a few of them a moment ago. They're still out there. But generally, because of some of the things that were said a few months ago, I do favor moving along with this. It's been pointed out several times in the last few meetings that it's not unchanged. And of course, if you look at the record, there are many times when people responsibly came to a meeting and said, I'd like to have this or that. And the council gave them change of interpretation. Those can happen now. So generally, I'm in favor. Secondly, I want to apologize. Some of you know that my bachelor's was in music.
I learned about projecting your voice, singing.
Yes, and I was in a hurry because I only had to move 43 seconds. So I started talking over there loud because I knew the microphone was over here. But once I got here, I looked at the I got quite used to the sound. I just wanted to have everybody hear everything real loud, and that was inappropriate. So please accept that. Obfuscation through innovation. is also a fallacy. And I don't honestly recommend, or remember, if it's one of the classic fallacies in reasoning. But it's real closely related to the call to perfection fallacy. Where you can't do anything, so everything is fixed. Now, if you're launching the James Webb Space Telescope, I can understand, but we're not. All of us. We have some very resourceful people here who will go out and buy a piece for 65, put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and massage a little business, and bring down 1,000 a month. And I'm happy for you. If that's the plan. Do it. I used to be a landlord here. And then folks up on the hill, like us, sold that piece to then Major Cornwall for a little over $254, and recently it sold for twice that. And when you look up there, you got prices right now at 600,000 and 700,000. Now, are they in it for the money? Is it their business? No. But sure. Yeah, to be practical. But it's not the same priority as people who are making a business out of it. Rent. Yet none of those people are here. But it's the council's responsibility to address the concerns, whether your property costs you $65,000 or $650,000. It's the council's responsibility to work with all of those possibilities, as best you can, knowing that you can change them. So I'm saying right now, I'm not in favor or opposed, only because I'm not sure where all the variables are right now. Generally, I favor doing something well over a year on this. Especially when you're willing to say to yourselves, you know what, this is really complicated. And we probably should visit this again and make a calendar and do something so that you can responsibly approach the changes in a more timely, maybe organized fashion. Once again, thank you for your service. I mean that sincerely, every single one.
Thank you, Mike. I got to shut the thing off. Okay, anyone else wish to testify that are not in favor or opposition or would like to ask questions? Okay. Then we will, move. We will not move on. I should read this letter. It doesn't address any particular criteria that was, submitted. I don't know, it doesn't address any particular criteria.
But it still can be out of the record whether you read it or just it'll be added to the record since we received it. We just put it in with the memorandum of the minutes if it's not read. So either way, it will be put on the website. Everybody can read.
That's what I suggest. It doesn't.
Either way, it will be available for anybody to read and will be on the record.
It doesn't meet the criteria of opposition.
Yeah, it's just, it was just kind of a ramble,
We'll
but it's,
enter it into the record and it'll be available. Okay, so here's where we're at. Now we're into deliberations. So I think the first thing we should address is Dave's new findings.
not new.
Well, not new, but newly realized or newly brought up or newly, I don't know what you.
It's not new at all. This has been talked about 3 or 4 times with Paul, but it hasn't been talked about in like 4 months. So.
Okay. So to recap, the current code or the current zoning public space, is it public, what is it?
Public
space?
uses.
Public use zone does not have any permitted uses.
Doesn't have any
Or
uses.
enough.
Doesn't have any allowable, it's not perfect, it's not permitted and allowable, so allowable uses. So in other words, if you have a public space, it doesn't say what you can do with the public space. It just says space. So the golf course is the same thing. So technically, if we were to go get a building permit to add to the golf clubhouse or build another shop up there, where's the development code that says you can do that? There isn't. There isn't any currently. It's just always been just done. Well, in 2025, that's probably not a good approach. We need to have some sort of, gotta have a building, it's gotta meet certain building codes, X, Y, Z, and the fire department's a perfect example. We didn't really have anything other than say, yeah, they wanna do it, okay. But there's nothing in our development code that said that over there, that they had to meet some criteria. Now, and that may be a bad example because they are building something, a seismic thing. So it's overkill by a lot. But the church or city hall or Fort Henrietta or George Park or the church is a good one because it's also, you guys wanted it back in public use, which public use of churches is generally not a thing. It's usually residential. There's no building code of any kind whatsoever. So what was suggested to me tonight was that if that's where we're going to go, then we need to have some code put back in the development code that would give us some sort of criteria to remodel a church, work on city hall, to do these things. We just don't have anything. If that's what you guys want.
The other thing that, Dave, sorry to interrupt, but the other thing that would solve that is rezoning it to residential.
Yeah, you can.
Because then you'd be.
The school, the cemetery, the ones that make sense to be residential based on most other towns is the school, the cemetery, the church. Because those are all areas in there. Right now, the cemetery, if they come to us with a request to do anything, and they're like, anything more than an annexation, we don't have any way, if they wanted to build a shop or put a tool shed or anything over 200 square feet up there on the new property that they're gonna bring into the city, they couldn't do it legally. So we could easily.
You have no way to.
Correct. I'd have no way to approve it. So really, that's the easy fix for that is just to get some development code or have those specific areas put back into a residential. Because here's the thing, the school bought 7 new acres that, what was the Snow property, is the Hatley property on the north side of it. Well, that's all part of that residential zone that was in the subdivision. So on the current updated map that we just got 2 days ago, that's still not quite right, that's why it's not here, is zoned residential that the school owns and is wants to develop. It can be developed because it's got development code that says they can do X, Y, Z. The school where it sits at is been put back into public use space or public space. Now we're back in the criteria again. If we move forward, I know they've remodeled, they've done these things all these years, but there's never been any legal, there's been no legal way to do it.
Legal basis.
Correct. It's just been done. And I guess it could continue to just be done, but eventually somebody can and would come back or could. Today, it's not 1960 anymore, 1980 anymore, 1990 anymore. Somebody could easily come back and challenge it. And so you didn't legally allow you to have that facility. And I don't think Echo would need some sort of partner like that. And I don't think I think that would cause issues. So it would be an easy fix to either zone it back to out of public use into residential where all schools sit in residential, because that's where schools are, is where you people live. And the development code that you have proposed addresses all of that and allows you to build the school, fix the school, and do gymnasiums and tracks and all that kind of stuff. Or we add more language to the development code for the allowable use, which for the public spaces. So we either add more or we switch one back around. But again, leaving the city hall and the parks that we want to live in public space, we still are going to need to have some sort of language for what's allowable uses in those areas. Yes, ma'am. That's one way of doing it, except I got a question for you. So the city hall needs to come before the council to get, besides approving the budget and approving those types of things, or the park, if we want to take the gazebo out and put a new gazebo in, we would need to get a permit to do that.
And currently.
We don't have anything for that.
Criteria.
We don't have anything that allows us to do that. With under the current zoning of it, other than we just go and do it. See, my point is that you can't build on something that doesn't have you shouldn't be able to build anything without some sort of box that says, these are the allowable uses on this property. Okay, so what you're suggesting, Tammy, I want to make sure I understand this correctly, is that we just leave it no man's land, and then we have to come in, but what criteria are you going to approve, Tammy? What are you going to say when I come to you as Gina and I want to, or the city, and I want to build a cabin in the park down here for whatever, and I'm going to ask you, what criteria do you allow me to do that? That's the conundrum that you're going to find yourself in when you have a hearing. If you have the development code, then you don't need to have a hearing, or the building planning commission, if it steps to those levels, would hear it. It wouldn't all come all the way to the council. I don't think the council, most cities' councils don't approve every building thing.
Chapter on public hearing zoning that we have had.
Public hearing, I'm really sorry, I don't understand this whole hearing thing, Tammy, so.
Public
explain it
use,
to me.
she just, oh, sorry.
Probably so, we can't have a little chapter on that.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting that we do,
Well, we either do that.
or we zone it back.
Some parks as residential, and then your code goes.
So that would be.
And that's already in there, so we'll just,
Protected. And just continue.
public use.
We just need that language for the residential so that they can grow and add and put it in another little chapter, a couple little inserts into our new plan.
Well, and that's what Carla and I talked about tonight, if that's what you wanna do, we're still not clear on, right now, you currently, the way that you had us change everything the way you wanted it months ago was that the school was public use. The school and the cemetery are my two biggest concerns, because they are not zoned correctly at all. They don't match any other community, they don't match any other criteria, because now we have a school with split zoning. We have part of the school property, public use, which I don't understand, and neither did the planners. And then we have the new property that the school purchased is residential, when it's all in a residential zone. Or in a residential area. That was the confusing part, Tammy. So for the rest of it, if you guys want to have language added, we could figure that out. I don't know if Carla's going to do it, or we have to go out and find another planner, or how that would work. Because I don't have the skill set to go and the backing, the understanding to go get the right code. I mean, I could go, I guess, on the internet, but that's not probably the best place when you have a professional planner that can at least give you an outline. But again, the school and the cemetery are my two biggest concerns.
So what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking, Dave, is that if the school, to be legal.
To be concurrent with each other. Right now, they're
To
on.
be legal, let's say the school wanted, they got those basketball courts in the back and they wanted to add a couple of classrooms and tear those basketball courts out.
Yep.
Okay, let's say that happened. If the process is followed legally,
Correct.
then they would apply for a permit for that.
Correct.
The permit would get denied under the current zoning.
Now that we understand it better, yes.
Because there's no criteria in there to allow that use.
Correct.
So then at that point, once their permit got denied, they would have to come before the council and ask for that property to be rezoned so that they could then build a structure on it.
Or you fix it
Or
up,
we would have to, but if we left everything alone, that's how it would have to happen.
Correct. So this,
Same with the cemetery. The
So-
cemetery gets that ground and they want to build a shed or whatever for their lawnmower and their fertilizer and all that.
if they were to move.
Then they would have to come, they would have to get a permit for that from the city.
Yep.
The city would deny it because it's not zoned. There's nothing in the zone that says they can do that. So then they would have to ask for that piece of property to be rezoned,
So you,
right?
and so let's load a timeline here. So if it's zoned, if the cemetery is zoned correctly, the school is zoned correctly, because the language is already in the current proposed plan, they come in, they get a permit, they go out the door. There's 5 minutes and you're done. This process you're describing could take months, half a year to get done, at least a half a year to get done, because you're gonna have to rezone, you have to notify you at 35 days. It would be a minimum, Tammy, minimum under Oregon law, go look it up, 3 months minimum. Because you have to notify the property owners all around it. You have to send out, go through DLCD, those that you're gonna rezone. There's the hearing process, which we're doing now again, and go through that process. So it's not gonna be very long. Yes, ma'am.
So, if we had Carla put some language in there for the public zone, we wouldn't have to do the rezone.
For the school and the cemetery, I think you need to reconsider the zoning. I think the rest of it, you could leave it alone. I think you could leave it in public use and we could get some language. I think the school is it's in my mind, the way I see a school zone, too much of a mess, because you're still gonna have two different zones. You're still gonna have a school zone that's in residential under the way you've rezoned it, and part of it, and the main part of the school district in public use, which makes no sense. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that there's all in the residential, then that for the school and the cemetery, then the rest of it can be in public use, and then we do, as you said, get some new language that would meet those areas, because those are more like areas, the golf course, the parks, the fire hall, those are more public facilities. The school, yes, it's a public facility, yes, ma'am, you're 100% would be with that, but
It makes
But
it
it's-
easier
it's
for the
makes-
school to manage.
well, it makes sense, but schools and cemeteries are generally in neighborhoods, unless it's a, cemetery out in the middle of the country, but they're generally in those areas. They're generally zoned that, and that's why I was saying, so if we're finishing up the zoning map and getting close to something that we can agree on, which we had rezoned it verbatim what you told us to do 4 months ago. But Anderson and Perry's GIS guys have been busy, so we haven't been able to get them to do it till recently. So, to get us an updated map. We just met with them in the last couple of weeks, so, to get that done. And a lot, once we rezoned it and we sat there and we looked at it, so, well, there's a lot of, now I got more questions. How do we make this work? How do we make it continuity? So if you, are the superintendent of the school, Tammy, and your school board tells you want to do this X, Y, Z, now you've got, right now it's a mixed mess. You come in and with it straightened out, then you're like, oh, well, I can look at the city code. We don't have to do this. We do this. We go to city hall, we get a zoning permit. We head down and get our building permit, get our contract. So that's the big difference here. But I get why you want to have some of these hearings, but I think I would also ask you to consider, Tammy, that through this process, that you try to make this as easy as possible. You hear Gina has had some good points about making things easier, making things as easy as possible. What we have right now is not easy, it's complicated, and it shouldn't be. It should be less complicated. That's what's proposed. I know we can disagree about it, and that's fine. But it's less complicated to be able to say, I know what you want to do. You want to build a house, you want to build a shed, you want to do this. You're doing 50% of your cover, you got this. Well, boom, see you later, bye, done. Out the door you go get your building permit. No hearings, no fighting, no going to, all that kind of stuff. Pretty simple.
Well, I kind of appreciated that you mentioned that you'd be comfortable with just doing the school and the cemetery. in the
Putting them
residential.
back into the residential,
But
yes.
that's, that was Jane sits on the cemetery board, I don't. And I'm not representative of the school, so I don't know what their comfort level is, in that. area.
Simple. They want simple. I don't know. I can't speak for Janie, but I know that I work with Raymond.
If
The
I
less
was
complicated, the
if I was
better.
on this-
That's up to you, Janie.
but
You
I'm
want to do
not
it?
this. I mean, we can solve that.
I can't hear you. Sorry. Yeah, I know you are. I talked to Agri, so I kind of know where you're at. So, yeah, I know.
So
We're slow.
I would be, personally, I would be happy with changing the school and the cemetery to residential. That fixes that. We know there's gonna be something coming up for the cemetery. So let's help them out
Oh, and the school wants to develop that land in the back, so.
Correct, and that would help the school out, and it would be more congruent
Yep.
and easy for them.
Yep.
And easier for you, and then we
Well,
can,
whoever.
and then for the other zones, the other public use.
City halls,
City
all
hall, that
boards,
we can have
parks.
some code, see if Carla can add some code.
So I have another question. The church. Do we want it residential? So that, because they didn't want it commercial, or do they want it residential commercial? Because it's kind of on that cusp right there. They didn't want it commercial, I know that, so I think we moved it back to either public use or residential commercial.
allowed to build on public use.
Well, no, wait, Janie. Under,
I'm just asking.
yes, of course you would be able to if you have allowable uses. What is the allowable use of the public space? I couldn't answer that question right now. I never could. I don't know what's allowable because it's just public space. So if I know that the public space allows sheds, churches, benches, gazebos, merry-go-rounds, then you come to me with a merry-go-round or a church or gazebo, I go, check box, see you later, bye. And so, but I don't know what those are. So that's where we got to put those back in. And not to defend or to put down how the PAC or Carla went on these issues. And I know there's lots of disagreement, so I don't want to go back down that road, but I do want to hit upon something just because I think it's important, again, to hit upon, and that is, the attempt, it may have failed a little bit, but it was attempted to make it more streamlined and easier to understand, because 99.9% of all this stuff that's got you guys confused, you're never going to see or deal with ever in your life. The person that's issuing the permits has to be the expert, or persons, has to be the expert to be able to help that landowner, that church, that school, that cemetery board, that that the landlord that wants to do things on the property, to decipher that and work through that process and get them the proper direction and give them the proper permits. And while we're talking about that, I want to be really clear. Gina brought up a point about we don't need extra permits. We don't have a planning department. So there can't be a whole bunch of extra permits because we have a planning department. We will still continue to issue development permits and a few other little things, I think at the most, which we already do now. So there's not going to be a whole bunch of additional things. The only way that you're going to get a whole bunch more permits, like when you go to Hermiston, you got 5 pages. I got to pay for steps. I got to pay for a deck permit. I got to pay for this, which they have. They have a planning department and they charge all those fees. We don't have that. So how can we do that? We don't have a planner. We don't have any way to go and engineer and approve your deck or your 8-foot fence or your concrete walls. We don't have any way of doing that. We have this permit and this development code. We see that it meets the code or it does, and it doesn't require a hearing. Then we give a development permit and then you go off and you get your building permits and you do your thing. Or if it's an apartment complex, then we have the layers of stuff for approvals and you guys will approve that. So those concerns just need to go away because they don't exist. Right now, it's a development permit. Next year, there'll be a development permit. So that doesn't change. So I kind of digressed and got in the weeds a little bit there, but I want to kind of hit upon that is that, again, I don't know where some of this is coming from because it wasn't the intent, nor is it in the development code that we're going to have 50 permits. So we want to make it easier. You want to make the next, and Gina brought up another good point. So the next city administrator interprets it correctly. Well, if it's clear cut, the next city administrator, they can read, it's clear cut. Because it's going to say X, Y, Z. It's going to be black and white, not gray, not, purple and pink and all the other colors that could be out there. So I agree with that 100%. And as a city manager using the current 1978 and 2005 code, it's hard for me to understand because it's a mess. It's not because it's anybody's fault. It's just how it was done back then. And now we're getting a chance to clean it up. So Tammy, I agree with you. I think that the public uses yes, that you can build on these things, but what can you build? You don't know. So you want to have some allowable uses put on paper that says in public spaces, you can do this. That's what we need for the public spaces. And that will deal with that. But it doesn't really deal with the cemetery or the school because that's different areas.
So Dave, why don't we put
And she's listening, so she's not going to respond, but she's listening.
So you've got private or semi-private entities. You get a school, you get a cemetery.
Well, they're not
They're not private.
at all.
They're not private, they're public, but they're not city government. They're not city owned.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, so you've got the school, you've got the cemetery, you've got the fire hall, and you've got the church. The church is private because it's owned by the church board.
And I think it should be residential
So if you
commercial, but
change-
at the very least.
If you change am I missing anything? All the other properties, the Arboretum, the city hall, the parks,
It's all over the
those
place.
are all under city property. So we can leave those. They're less, we can deal with that as a city.
Well, but I still think that if we're doing this, I agree with Tammy, we should go ahead and have
We should have some.
a chapter added to the development code for that use,
Right,
because it's a zone in the city. We don't currently have that in there. We have a zone that has no definition.
So let's change the school and the cemetery to residential. So that the school will be congruent with the cemetery, will be congruent in the cemetery. It saves the cemetery from having to have another public hearing and go through that monthly, several month process. So we can solve that issue tonight. Then the fire hall and the church can be zoned residential commercial.
Well, the fire hall could be either one, I think. that's-
Either one, but it's in the residential commercial zone, so it's just right there
I
on
agree.
Green Street, so it makes sense. And we know what the
And we already have the development code for that.
We already have the development code for that, so the church and the fire hall and the school and the cemetery are all taken care of. If they need to do anything, there's a legal process that makes it clear cut and legal for them to do that. The city stuff, the city owned property, then that Carla can add something in there for that code. And then it's clean and easy and everybody still gets what they want.
And it doesn't change, and it'll still leave the zoning that everybody was adamant about for the golf course.
Correct, the golf course is still city property.
Yeah.
State.
I personally, I'm not speaking because I'm not on the cemetery board or the school. I'm fine with them being changed to residential, but the church did not want to be changed. They wanted to stay, but they were.
Well, that's the question. I think that, it was hard to see, but it almost looked like they were residential commercial and before. But if it's public use, then I don't understand that quite. I don't understand that. I need to.
Before we say that, because they were really adamant.
Yeah, they didn't want commercial. They didn't want commercial. Jerry got up and said residential commercial multiple. So.
Before I feel comfortable.
Well, we can check the record. Jerry's testimony is on the record.
Well, yeah, and I'm just looking up, I'm gonna pull up, I'm listening, keep talking and throwing ideas at me while I pull up, the draft that I got from Rusty the other day, which I don't think is exactly the way I want it, but it's close. December, streets and basement.
This to you, what we're talking about?
Yeah,
You've been pretty quiet.
Just
Okay, so
explanations and.
So that is.
you have to
Purple,
comment.
So purple. Okay, so it's rezoned back to where it was. I'm looking at the map, which we went back to the 1978, well, the 2005, because remember, everybody came in. So what we have on the reproposed church is purple. Purple is residential commercial, because Carla had put it in commercial, and they did not want that. They were very adamant. They didn't want that commercial. They wanted it back the way it was. So we put it back as residential commercial. Everything on Sprague that's on the backside of Main is residential commercial, and everything on the backside of Main on Bridge is now back to residential commercial like it was prior to the project starting. So those are right back the way they were.
That works, they just didn't want.
So I just wanted to make sure, because I didn't want to be speaking out of both ends there, but this is, so it's basically a non-issue for the church. But it's still an issue for the golf course, city hall, and all the parks and all that, because there's no allowable use.
Well, if we have that public use, that would be city-owned property.
Correct.
And then what about the fire hall?
Fire hall is public space. We put it back where they had it, that doesn't have any use whatsoever.
So they may want to expand the fire hall one day or add another structure to it, so.
Well, they've already done all of that and I approved it because, but I didn't know that I could, I didn't understand, I did not understand our code. And after it was explained to me, it was like, how did you do that? What did you use the criteria for? I said, I just thought I could do it. Well, no, you don't. So that's where I did it in injustice. But then again, we didn't stop anything and no rule zone basically happened and they got to do what they want to do. They still paid a lot and they still made a beautiful facility. I think that should be commercial and then it has all those commercial uses because, or some other thing, but if you want a public use, Jamie, you're on that board. So both of those lots are public use, so.
You just, okay, fire first. Fire eight. Well, I think it'd be easier to write simple code for city-owned property, because that's a lot easier.
That's what I think, and then,
Than lumping the fire department into city-owned property. The city has a different role than the fire department.
well, yeah, in most cities, a number of cities, the fire department and PD are underneath the city. In this case, we're a city of many districts. So we have a district for everything. So, and that's the way it's always been in Echo, and that's the way it'll always be, I'm assuming. But I question that, and I have questioned it for quite a while, how it's on Main Street. Everything else on Main Street is commercial but fire.
So, okay, so the church is non-issue now. So
Church is a non-issue,
school, I suggest.
but the school concern.
My opinion would be to have the school and the cemetery be residential, the fire hall be commercial, and then we add code for city public use, city-owned public use property. That's my recommendation or opinion. Maria, what do you think? Sorry, I was trying to start asking you.
Yeah, I think we should go with the school and the cemetery, give them residential, they can grow and as they work.
And there won't be any extra work. All I have to do is have the GIS guy go back in and change all the colors again. And on those two and get that, but the verbiage is already in the code you have right in front of you. There's no, whatever changes you make, that's fine, but there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Is what I'm saying.
Maria, what do you think about the fire?
I think we should.
Make it commercial? Or leave it as public space? It'd be the only non-city.
It's not public open space.
Okay.
It's public.
Sorry, that.
You guys.
Public use.
Public use. There you go.
Sorry.
It's a very complicated use. It's not a use, it's not a zone that's used.
Non-city owned property that's.
So-
Correct. It's owned by the taxpayers and the board, fire board runs it. So
Yep.
they're funded on a whole separate thing. They take care of their own budget.
See, when you see your taxes, there'll be a little thing for the fire department. Yep. And the school and the library board and everything else they tax you on. So,
So hang on, Chief.
Right now, what it is public
Use,
use.
which doesn't have any allowable uses. So
yeah.
in the future, when we have a new city administrator, they're not gonna have any way to approve any additional structures or anything like that on that property without.
And then with this other, we would have a little bit more, way of getting something for them. I
Yeah.
think that other way would be good.
Okay, very good. Jamie, what do you?
I was wondering about residential, commercial for fire.
I can ask I'll go back and I will ask what, I can go look to what Hermiston has there. I can look and see what Hermiston, Umatilla, Pendleton, Stanfield, what they have their zone at. I can look at it.
Medicine school, Pendleton school is public use.
And I'm sure they have some language for it.
They probably, I'm sure they have code that would address that. Richard?
I have nothing to add with what you described, I thought that was fine.
Okay. And Tammy?
I'm fine with that. The only thing, my only concern would be that I don't think that would affect the taxes with the a fire district at all, but,
No.
because they're, volunteer. So, but.
It's a 501, so they're.
That's
You could zone that purple Mars, Tammy, and it's not gonna change what taxes they're charging, they can't.
So are you okay with doing that then?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
fine with the commercial, residential, or commercial,
Okay,
whichever one.
so there you go.
And then school and cemetery, residential.
Good. Look at that.
Yeah, it's residential, commercial, which is what it was.
Okay, Dave, so there you have it. We'll do that. I think we have a consensus amongst us.
All commercial, got it.
Wonderful feeling.
School, cemetery, residential,
Let me do that.
okay.
Got my white shirt on, me, make it.
Yeah, we wanna see that.
No, you don't. So let's move on then. Thank you, Dave, for that. Sorry, guys, that's kind of something that popped up, but here we are.
We got it clear enough.
Yes, and I think I'm happy that we can save the cemetery and the school some heartache down the road. It's easier for that. So, let's move on into the code, the, development code, which we had our work session on. And we had a few things that, I took to Dave. And so the first one that I'd like to address is, you had asked Tammy about in our tourist commercial district. You had asked about the buffer zone. And it took me a minute to wrap my brain around this because I had to go backwards and forwards. And Dave and I sat down and we found it, we figured it out. So I'm gonna give you the explanation. It is exactly as we voted in. And here's the deal. So any use of property within 100 feet of residential zone, this is a allowable use. So this you can do without a permit. Okay? Or no, excuse me, this is a.
You have variances and allowable, did you get
Right.
those mixed up, we got them straight? 'Cause I gave
So-
you-
So you have, let's go to the first page. Conditional use. This is in the tourist commercial district, this is a conditional use. Any use of property within 100 feet of a residential zone unless a minimum 60-foot buffer is provided between the commercial use and any adjacent residential zone or use. Through conditional use procedures, the planning commission may impose such additional limitations as may be warranted to reduce conflicts between uses. So if you're using a property within 100 feet of a residential zone, you have to have a 60-foot buffer, okay? Then, the other piece of this is in a tourist commercial district, any use of property within 100 feet of a residential zone shall provide a buffer that can be achieved by 60 feet of open space or a combination of fencing up to 12 feet in height and landscaping to include evergreen plantings to achieve both noise and visual relief at a depth of 20 feet. So that is,
And some of those were your ideas, Timmy, because that's when we rezoned it up there.
so
Wait, I
that,
didn't understand, I guess, so now that you're reading it, so they're just saying that we have to achieve noise and visual relief at a depth of 20 foot.
And here's the thing that Chad and I talked about to kind of clarify that it also says in there that the council and or planning commission, whatever it's before, it has discretion in there to may add or subtract that depending on what it is. So if you have a flower shop that builds a big flower shop there and they're doing flower shops and they have racks out, say Copax decided to buy property there, they went out there, they put some greenhouses and they did that. And that's kind of an attractive site. Or a car dealer or car repair shop shows up and they've got engine blocks and, you know, air guns going and ratchets and things going on. That may require, you may require that they move it back maybe 80 feet and they put up the 12-foot fence and 3 rows of hedges to reduce the thing. So you guys have some discretion built into that code. That's the reason why you guys did that in the first place. This 60-foot minimum was to set a box to start with. So, because in your conditional use, you might have a business that meets your conditional use, but will be annoying to somebody living in a house, and so you're gonna wanna have more shielding. Does that make sense, Debbie?
Well, so I understand that then it's 60 feet, we could change that.
No,
So the 20 feet would be that they, if there was a problem with noise and visual.
yes,
And we needed more, noise to stop the noise and more, visual relief, then we would do something at the depth of 20 feet to stop that.
more, yeah.
Visual.
A visual relief of 20 feet, so that would be in within that 60, or you guys could make it up to 80. Because remember, when we did this, when Carla, this is one of the things that Carla pretty much cut and paste 100%, because we just approved those updates. At the M1 and the C2, we had just done that when Kent came in and zoned that property with Jacob. And so all she did was clean up the language and fix the spelling and all that kind of stuff and add in, just kind of move things around. Didn't change any numbers, didn't change any criteria. She just moved it over onto a different format. That's all she did. So what you approved 3 years ago is right in front of you.
So the only thing I guess I got confused on was the 20 feet, because I thought that could be where they put a wall, but it isn't. It sounds like 60 feet is where they put a wall.
Well, 60 feet is the zone, and somewhere in that zone, you're putting the wall and you're putting the hedges, and maybe you don't need a wall. Maybe you just do a row of hedges, but the next property down is gonna require a wall because it's an auto shop.
It makes it look like that DP is, they could put their building where.
Yeah, that's not it, no, 60. Yeah, no, and I'm glad because I remember we had this confusion when we did it. So, and I'm glad it came back up, but yeah, no, it did not change at all. When we were doing it in the pack, one of my meetings with her was, oh, we just approved this, just switch it over, make it so it looks better, but it's the same stuff.
Thank you. I just didn't want it, we spent a lot of time working on that. And
Yeah,
we had
yeah.
a lot of people come, that
Yep.
we put that into vote.
Yep.
They're not here now, but they were Echo Heights, and I just didn't want that to change.
They didn't,
And it did.
Yep.
they did not.
It was confusing that night.
Yeah, and I'm sorry you guys got confused on that. And frankly, when you start talking buffers and you start talking all these different things, that's where planners, that's where they do that kind of stuff because it gets complicated in a hurry.
Okay, so wonderful. Good job, guys. Thank you, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for helping me out with that and the rest of the council. So we had also discussed, let's start with one of Gina's concerns with the 50% lot coverage. We talked about going higher than that, lower than that, as proposed at 40%. How are you guys feeling about staying at the 50% as it is in the current code? Is everybody okay with that, or do you want to stay at 40%? The lot coverage.
No, the lot coverage for.
Lot coverage. Yes. The current code is, no, we haven't got to the. Hang on, Jimmy, I'll get to it. I think.
So something to keep in
Hang
mind.
on, hang on, Dave. Richard, are you?
And,
I want to make sure I include everybody.
well, Carla sent me something really cool that I think was something that my math brain just got excited about. She goes, a lot coverage of 80%. So she was throwing out, because there's different percentages depending on if it's a double wide, an apartment complex, triplex, complex, blah, blah, blah. She was going, well, lot coverage at 80% would require a home impervious surface to equal 4,000 square feet on a 5,000 square foot lot. And there wouldn't be anything left. You couldn't even park your car up front. So she threw that out there that if we went that far or the other way around, mathematically that makes sense and there wouldn't be anything. So I would just say that the 50% is fine. It works. It's easy for me to do. That's easy math.
Yeah. So if everybody's okay with that, then we'll move on.
I'm fine with
that. So then let's get into, sorry, I'm scratching off my notes. So let's talk about sheds and light materials. And And Jeannie, you do want to talk about landscaping, so I'll add that to my notes, okay? So the question came up, and I talked to you about this, Dave, about what is considered like materials and why isn't it more specifically stated? What, does it have to be identical to my house or my building? Or what, where do we go with this? Because the rule, and from what I gather, people don't want hard, fast, specific, so many specific rules. So the rule is kind of open-ended a bit.
A little
And
bit.
so could you explain that to us? Because metal sheds, and I have one on my property, it's a metal,
Lots of
small
people
metal
do it.
shed,
They're not
sliding
even.
doors. And it kind of looks like a cute little house, but it's not, it's just a metal shed. Explain that to us, and
Well, I'll do my best, and I'm pretty sure she'll probably tell me when I say it wrong. So, the way I understand it, so let's take the most unique, I mean, an example of like material that's like, so like it's more than required would be the house that the owners own and the shop that they own. It's built out of, the similar siding, Dick had painted them all the same color and same roofing and same gable ends and yada, yada, yada. But then it's different because you didn't frame the windows the same. He's got different things on the shop versus the house. And so, but yet it's very much like materials. But then you take other shops and like, I have to go back and double, triple check, but I'm pretty sure Kevin Fife's big shop. That's just a big pole barn with metal siding and metal roof and structure. But that is still a allowable use because it's on that property anyway, that it's built to a standard. It's not like what Gina brought up, that dome thing it's in Hermiston that none of us like. Or I don't know, maybe, I don't know, tiny houses, like materials. Like materials, she says like materials is just that. If they want to allow a metal shop, they should allow that. So, yeah. So if we want to do that, then we probably should add, she's right. So we need to add, if we don't have that specific thing in there or allow for those type of pole barns, then we need to add that language.
okay.
But it's still not, it could be under a conditional use anyway, but I believe, she probably correct me if I'm wrong, but, most of the sheds and shops around town, where you get into trouble in Echo, any town, is when you start building these things inside or outside the setbacks. When people have a 5,000 square foot lot, they got a double wide on it, and they have a strip for a lawn on one side, and their property is over here near the edge, and then they squeeze in 3 sheds and a doghouse. And now they're up against the property and they're not in setbacks. That's where we get into all kinds of problems. Or out here where we have.
We're not worried about the setbacks.
Well, but setbacks play a role in what you can get, what the size of a shop or garage
Right,
or
and
shed you can put on.
We're not talking size, we're talking material. So if we need to add some sort of statement about previous opinions. If we need to add some language in there that states your shed needs to be built out of currently approved building materials, and it shall be of like appearance to the structures around it, then you could do that.
And so like she said, if it's an allowable use, we add that allowable use, and it just is a development permit. So if you want to put a 50 by 100 shop and you have, a 10,000 square foot lot, and you have a 5,000 square foot house, or excuse me, you've used up some of that for your house and you've got other 5,000 square foot and you want to put a shop on there, it's allowable use. You get a building, you get a development permit like you did for your house. You get your building permit and you build your shop metal or wood. So it's not, everybody wants to put restrictions on this, and because it doesn't specifically say, is it metal or is it this? If we need to add that on there, and to do that, the thing that the planner is going to tell you, she just did, is that the number of accessory structures should be limited so you don't build 15 sheds on your property, unless well, I don't know why somebody would do that. But you don't have a house and 15 sheds, but then again, then you get into those, what do they call them, AU, whatever they are, so you can go. ADUs, there we go. And that's different. But the new development code would allow you, if you have the property, you could do it ADU. We currently can't do it in Echo. So if we want to clean that up, I'll talk with her and make sure that we can address that a little bit so it's less confusing and make sure it's an allowable use and make sure it's clearly an allowable use. But I don't think we should define every little piece of thing. I think that gets too pigeonholed.
But we're talking about sheds.
No, we're talking about shops and sheds,
Are
Chad.
we talking about shops and sheds?
Yes,
Okay.
because you're talking about anything under 200 square feet, you don't have to permit but you have to follow the setbacks.
Right, and we have those setbacks in the proposed code and in our current. code.
Right, so if you have anything under 200 square feet and it's a shed, nobody's gonna say anything unless you're on somebody, unless you're screwing with the setbacks.
Right,
So it's metal, plastic, whatever. doesn't
right,
matter.
so we're worried about structures over 200 square feet.
Well,
They have to be built out of light materials, is what it currently says. And you're thinking we should change it to.
Not change it, just add a few of the accessory uses to it.
Add-
That'll do it.
What do you mean accessory uses?
Well,
We're not talking about uses, we're talking about building materials, built out.
oh, that's one thing she did mention, that the shop and the house, generally the accessory building should be smaller than the house, but
Well, I think that's already in the code, the
It is.
proposed code.
it is.
So I think all we're worried about is what it's built out.
Right.
So that's all we need to address.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Currently, it says accessory buildings shall be constructed of materials that are the same like materials used on a primary building.
So, but it still doesn't say, it says like materials, it doesn't say the materials. So, I mean, it doesn't pigeonhole you directly into that, Jamie. But if you're more comfortable, you got a brick house, well, you better get a seismic updated then. So,
Richard, what were you saying?
Well, the problem is that we're up against that using terms which are opinion. And there are always going to be differences of opinion. And so it's really, if you don't define it down to exactly the same material, then you open it up for some kind of problem and so on. But I don't think we can get rid of that. I think I think it's deadly to say, well, let me give you an example. My house has cement board siding, which we chose because it'll last longer than we will. And, but my garage is T111 plywood covering it. Not the same material in any shape or form. It paints the same color.
but it's a side.
But to me, they're matching. But I could sure see where somebody, if the code says the same material, whoever's making the decision could say that's not the same thing.
Yeah, it says light material, so I would consider that light material because it's siding. Siding is light material. Its purpose is to be siding.
That's your opinion.
Well,
That's what I'm
They
saying.
all have our.
true.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So,
I just don't think we can get rid of that.
Right, I don't think we can either. I don't know how you couldn't possibly list every building material out there to be so specific as to allow everything that is currently out there or would be out there in the future.
So currently, it's interesting you say that, Rich, but currently, I've only had 4 houses put in, 3 mobile wides and 3 double wides and a stick house built since I've worked here for the city. All I did for all 4 of those was make sure the structure was gonna fit on there and the percentage was correct and the setbacks. I issued a development permit and went on. I did not go examine if the concrete was the structural, if the power was right, if they used what siding they used. I'm not a planner, I'm not a surveyor, I'm not an inspector. So Echo is too small to get too far in the weeds on that. The biggest thing is that working with somebody, if they want to come in and build on one of these new lots, they want to buy 2 lots and put, livable space on both. They want to build a shop with an apartment upstairs, they want to build a house on the next lot over, they own both. I have some criteria to go with that, but once they're issued, I'm not gonna go check if they got hardy plank at T111. I never have, never will, and nobody else in Echo will unless you get a planner and an inspector. So I think the worry is a little overkill, but I definitely will address it by making sure we make that less confusing. Yes, ma'am.
So I just wanted to add that I think for my opinion on this opinion is that I know metal shops are not as much money as a stick-built shop.
Sure.
And that our economy in our city is not a high economy. And
Correct.
that people here could afford a metal shop more than they could the stick-built. And the Cleary buildings are metal, they look nice.
Mhm.
And it would be a shame that somebody couldn't have a shop because they couldn't afford a stick built, because that's like double the price.
Right. So I think it's pretty fixable. I think we already did. Go for it again.
What's the proposed fix?
To add that language, to add the language in. Ready?
Let's just say it should be built out of currently approved building materials.
But that dome is approved building materials.
Yeah, but
We
it's
don't allow a
got-
dome.
but
I'm playing the devil's advocate.
Okay, but don't we have something in there that states that it has to have some sort of
I'll ask. I don't remember reading that in there, but
similar architecture? Let's do that, similar architecture to the main building. And made out of currently approved building materials. It's like tarps are not currently approved building materials, right?
yeah, I got you.
And then that solves the issue. Then you can use, metal is a currently approved building material. And if it has to be of likeness to the structure around it, then it can't be one of those it can be a bubble shop.
You want to have you want to have a bunch of yurts?
I don't want to have a bunch of yurts or teepees. I like teepees, but I don't, and they're going to stay in, but.
I built lots of yurts when I was in parks. Those are awesome structures.
They actually are awesome structures. They have one on top of Anthony Lakes.
Yes, they do. Anyway, we digress, but I love those movies.
So do you guys like that? Would that solve everybody's problem?
I have a question though. Do you have a TV? Is it gonna?
It's out there it's not permanent, it's out there on that property. It's not permanent, so it's just, it's up, it's not built on concrete, it's not anchored in the ground, she just has it sitting there. I'm skeptical of it a bit, but again, it's out on the farm ground and they're using it for stuff. I'm not gonna be here long enough to fight that, and I've talked to Linda, and I've talked to Gina. I don't see a big issue with it.
I know, I think it's charming because we're.
The only caveat to it, if the water would have been a couple feet higher yesterday, it would have been gone. So that's the only caveat to it.
So are you guys in agreement with that? Okay, perfect. There you go.
I like it. I got it on the recording.
Okay, so the next question, let's go to landscaping. Jamie? We talked quite a bit about landscaping. I thought we had pretty well figured that out, but hit us with what you got.
On the landscape materials, number 4, page 13, chapter 3.2, says, hardscape features, only 15% of the landscape areas, patios, decks, and plazas. Says if a So I wonder if the owner wants to turn the majority of their backyard into a patio or something and have potted plants. They're not allowed to because it says only 15% of their yard can have that.
I'll get that clarified. I think if you had a bunch of potted plants and trees and flower baskets and things like that, I think that ends up being some vegetation cover. I think that becomes a little bit of a gray area. I'll get clarification on that. But I don't see that being a major
I
problem.
think it's saying 50% of your lot. Can't be cut, no more than 50% of your lot can be covered by a deck or a concrete patio. Hard stuff, not gravel, not.
You say 3.2 on that, you said 3.2.
Chapter 3.2.
And we had this talk about materials and gravel and how.
Yeah, that's another issue.
And I talked to Dave about that, and and I was correct in what I was saying, if 50% of the coverage can be gravel, but if you put more than 50% of the coverage in gravel, and then put plants and trees, then that covers the gravel. So that 50% of the gravel basically is showing in a way, does that make sense? Like, so if you left it plain gravel, then yes, you could only have 50%. But if you went above 50%, then you're gonna have to plant shrubs or flowers or trees or something to that effect. If you just want gravel, then it's 50%. You have to have something in there to offset the gravel if you go above 50%.
Friend of my physical therapist that I go to for my back, he bought a place in Pendleton and their whole side yard, he didn't want grass. So he tore it all out. He had fruit trees. And so he did all rock under the fruit trees. So he doesn't have any grass whatsoever on his big 10,000 square foot lot. He's got a smaller house, but he just put it all rock, 100% rock, but there he's got 10 or 12 fruit trees.
It's not
Yeah.
just plain gravel, it's got.
So
Gravel all the way through, and I've seen houses in Hermiston, it's all, landscape with gravel, a few
Well,
plants.
it does go
I
on.
have a few
in there.
plants, yeah.
It does go on in there in the code to talk about offsetting that with plants and
Yep.
planting this and that and things to do that. And
I don't think it's as restrictive as you think, Janie.
Just that, if you go further into the code, like we talked about at the public hearing or the work session, then yes, you can have more. And there's ways to mitigate that and to allow for more. Just like Dave was saying with the fruit trees, you can certainly.
His
have those
entire
trees.
landscape is rock. And then on top of the rock, he's got the fruit trees. So 100% of his landscape on the bottom is rock.
Okay, well, that's what I was.
But he's got trees across it to break that up.
If he had no trees, then he would be.
I would think he would be in violation of Pendleton City Code if he didn't have some trees or plants or something on top.
Well, I just took it at face
Face
value.
value.
You can't have over 50% of property with rocks on it.
Right.
Period.
Gotcha. Understood. I figured that's what she was doing.
Well, that's what it said.
Yep. Got it. Understood. But I think your worries are real small on this one. I honestly do. And I will double, triple, quadruple check that, but she didn't send me anything, so I think we're on the right track. So.
Okay, the other question was on roofing materials. There was some confusion with that and I brought it up to you the other day. I don't know. if
I don't remember it. So what did you say?
Oh, it was, I don't even remember what section it was in. Nobody cares.
Roofing materials is kind of outside, I mean, that's gonna be building code to
That's
some degree.
the state code, but
Yes, ma'am.
The fire, it was that, there was like supposed to be no metal roofs.
oh, the question was, could we have metal roofs?
If they're approved structural metal roofs, I would have presumed so. We have lots of them in Echo.
And the codes didn't state what the roof had to be, it just had to be structural compared to
Yeah,
the base structure.
metal
or
roofs
something
are a
like
common
that.
thing. The further west you go, the more metalworks there are because of the rain. So, and
Yeah, I think.
when I lived in Central Oregon, we re-roofed all of our buildings with metal, so.
So we'll move on.
I think that's just, it has to be an approved building material there.
So then the next one is fence height. Tammy proposed to go to 8 feet without any, approval, additional approval. Some of us, including myself, would be fine with 8 feet if it was a conditional use, leave it at 6. But, I don't know where we're at as a council with what? Without any approval, everybody could have 8 feet fence heights.
See, Maria, your house, if you put an 8-foot fence in your front yard right up there by the sidewalk, when you back out of the driveway, you can't see the road.
Yeah,
So that would be a real concern.
yeah,
Well, I don't
That's why they don't do
I
that.
don't
That's
think
what.
the proposal was to change the front yard fence. I think that was the backyard from behind the house. Fence.
I don't think we can change the preference because of visual.
yeah.
Well, that's what I was worried about, but we have some, yeah, okay, as long as we're clear on that, because we talked about that a lot in the past. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I do too, but we, remember, we talked about it in the pack a lot, so.
All this time, that they say that from the street, a certain amount of footage back to your house, that you have to have it at so much, height because of
correct.
the vision for the rest of the people.
Right, so when
out
people
there.
drive down the road and your kids run out,
And
see
then,
them.
so then, and then the rest of it can, since the rest of it is just between you and the neighbor, can be
Right, yep.
higher. That's still. going.
Yeah, and
I think 6 foot, can I suggest this, Tammy, and then you think about that and tell me no or yes, or take a fine lead? I don't have a problem, I see you got Scott and I came down and talked with you and Brad some months ago about the property you bought, and I see that you're starting to put that up, and you put it way back in like we agreed upon, thank you. I would throw this out here for a thought. So 6 foot automatic for sides and back. 8 foot might be something you need to talk with your neighbor about, because maybe your neighbor doesn't want to look out their kitchen window and stare at an 8-foot fence. So there are, maybe as a suggestion that if your neighbor agrees, you can put it between their property. I think it could create issues, Tim. That's all I'm saying. So I know that where you live down in your end, it's pretty much all you, but the rest of the town has got, everybody's a different house in every house, different person in every house. If everybody wants an 8-foot fence, it's great. I think 6 foot is standard, because that's kind of that elevation to, you have a little bit of height, so you're not looking into the dining room directly, or the kitchen or the bathroom, or if your houses are fairly close, which we have a lot of houses that are close. So what do you think? I'm just throwing that out there.
I just, have experience from, it's what is based on experience that, we have a neighbor that they put a gate between us and came in our yard all the time, and I couldn't even take a bath. And
That's not good.
so I just think that I wouldn't do it if my house was the same level, but I just like privacy and.
Sure, so that's why I'm saying make it. It's a conditional use. I think I'll talk to Carla, but I don't see why that wouldn't be a conditional use, because maybe a Meta and Winston do want to have a 8 foot on one side, 6 on the other, and she might actually. So, but that would be something that they would want to work on. So I think that's not a bad idea.
And if one house sits a little higher than the other, it makes sense.
Yeah,
Not every single.
correct.
And it would be like-
Is that amendable? Because that's easy to fix. Okay. And then we keep the 4 foot in front for the visual, and we go good, we're good with that, and okay. That's not hard to do.
How does everybody else feel about that? I like it. Did you hear any of that? Exactly, okay, Richard's good with it.
He heard it. I know he heard me. I know he heard me. Cause he's smiling.
Okay, so then the last thing that I have on my notes, is that we could agree on, well, not necessarily couldn't agree on, but was a, thing of discussion, was brick walls or concrete walls, or poured concrete walls, concrete block walls, masonry walls, those kind of things that aren't wooden fences with posts and slats. Was there a state law that restricted that? That says that anything over 3.5 feet or a certain amount of feet has to be engineered or done by a contractor or whatever. And B, I think the restriction for 3.5, Tammy, I think you can say this yourself. I think you wanted to do away with the 3.5 feet and go to the same as a fence. Is that correct?
Well, in our original code, it was 6 feet for this statement, so I just wanted to leave it for the original, like the original code. That not retaining walls, but fences
Right.
constructed, and that was 6 feet, so I thought it was
So
good to leave it that way.
So I'm getting some research on that done. I started that process yesterday and again today. But I will say I did learn a couple things, Tammy, and there's a little bit more to learn, and I will get it out to you guys in maybe a memo or something here as soon as I get final from the state. But there is some concerns about a couple things, and so a concrete wall going down between two pieces of property is a fence, kind of like what you guys did between the Barthels and the new house that you bought from Judy down through there. And that's not super tall. What came up in the conversation, and I asked for a statute and they were going to look, but if you have this concrete wall and it's on flat ground and it goes that way, and it's just, 4 or 6 inches and it goes through there. I think the question, a couple things come up. Reinforcement for one, so it doesn't tip over. Is it got rebar in the ground, those type of things. The next thing is, this person told me, Dave, you need to take into consideration if the ground on one side is higher than the other. So say you're going like this and the slope goes up like this, it may not be a retaining wall right now, but what if this slope moved up against it? So they said that by default may end up being a retaining wall. Is it structurally sound at 6 feet tall to take that slope that back here on this other piece, if it's slid up against it in say a rainstorm or a mudslide, is it structurally strong enough to take that, or is it going to tip over? And so that's where the question came in, is it, so X flat ground between two driveways, I think was fairly clear. I'm still going to get some clarity on it and I'll get it in writing, that it was okay up to a certain height, because then if it's not engineered, Tammy, and it's just slapped in there with forms and some metal fencing and no rebar tied together, I've built enough concrete in my life to know that it'll crack and it'll fall over. And so, because it's just not reinforced. So, and then the other question came into a liability. And so the other question was this, and I got to clarify on that. So say you built your 6 foot wall on flat ground, but you didn't reinforce it. You just built a concrete wall, you put or you did a brick wall, but you didn't reinforce it with rebar or any type of structural material to hold it in place other than mortar. You just put it there. If that tipped over on your neighbors and smashed their car or killed their kid, who's liable? So there's some questions that I got to get answered for you, because those are viable questions, don't you think? Okay, and that's why when we were in the pack, and that's why there's been 2 times where if it gets above a certain height, it should be structurally engineered and designed, so it's not going to do one of those things. And so let me get some more clarity on that, because she couldn't give me a direct statute, and I said, well, I need something more concrete than I think. So we'll get it figured out, and it'll be soon. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
We put a fence in, but we put it with a legal builder, we didn't put it ourselves. The reinforced with rebar.
I saw.
And so I would expect that, to be done, but.
But not everybody does, Dan,
But-
so.
You have somebody that's bonded, that's a construction person, you know, that.
They would-
A legal engineer, they're having a huge of the cost.
Correct, but if it's a contractor, they're gonna wanna have, they don't wanna have it to come back on them if they're building a retaining wall around your house.
Well, yeah,
So-
same law is different than this.
Right. Well, yes, it is, but then again, like I said, the slope, what if he's building that and he's bonded and he's doing a dang good job and it's reinforced, but didn't take into account the full flow of that hillside that's on the other side of it, that it's not on, it's on a flat ground, it's flat, not doing anything but being there for a facade, it takes it out. So that's the questions that I want to get answered.
So what if you did this, Dave? I mean, you had a contract.
Sure, and I saw their work.
What if we left it at 3 feet? Then anything over that would need a,
I don't want to do that.
but anything over this would need a permit from City Hall, or it would have.
Well, technically,
And then that would be, you couldn't do it yourself. You'd have to have a licensed bonded contractor do it, or you'd have to bring us engineered.
currently, I don't have any authority to tell you to do that.
Okay,
So, and in the new development code, I can't go and tell Gina and Tammy and anybody else that, you know, that they can't build themselves.
Okay.
Okay, that crosses lines I don't,
well, I
we
was
don't
just,
have,
I was
so.
trying to solve that issue.
Well, no, but I see where you're going with it, and I appreciate that a lot. I think the concern I have though is that, there becomes a point where you have to have a structural engineer at a certain point to do structural things. Yes, a licensed bonded contractor that's built many structures, that does lots of reinforced concrete, yeah, I'd pretty trust them, especially if they're bonded, I'd go with that. I think I would, I watch concrete get poured every day over by my house, so I see a lot of concrete going in, and I've done a lot in my life, but I also think that we need to make sure that we are clear on that. I don't say 3.5 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet. I think it's gonna matter is where it is and what its purpose is, and I think we just need to get that cleared up. And I know we've talked about it before, and I thought I kind of had it cleared up, but now we have a little bit of mud here, and because the whole hillside not touching it thing kind of threw a loop in my little hole that I need to get answered. Yeah. And we don't really have to be in places in Echo where it's flat, like between you and the bar, I mean, where it's got these big hillsides. I mean, down where you guys are at, yes. But right around here in this neighborhood, it's pretty flat. You know, if somebody wanted to do that. So, well, they did base rock and got it in the ground, right? So. Yeah. So I didn't muddy it worse, did I?
No,
Okay.
no, we'll get smarter on it, that's good. That's the only thing tonight that really we need to get smarter on.
Okay.
And get the code for the city building put in, so really we got those two things.
Okay. Is that about where we're at, you guys?
That's all I have on my list from the work session.
That was all that was in the memorandum, so.
Yeah. So,
Janie, did you have something else that you wanted to know? Wow. So I can hear you. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble hearing you tonight. I don't know what's going on.
3.5 C.
3.5 C.
Page 33.
Copy that. I'm there.
Okay. I was wondering if that should be changed maybe to read, the city of Echo reserves the right to restrict building and or use of infiltration facilities in high-risk areas, including those on a steep slope, unstable soils. Excuse me, high water tables or sites in to be contaminated or hazardous substances.
well, this isn't building code. This is, isn't this water?
So 3.5.3
Surface
surface water, and we already have that in our public works standards. So in our public works standards for building, you know, well, everything's already built in town, so, but anything new being built has to use the bioswale technology because we do not have a permit for wastewater, underground water. We do not have, City of Stanfield, City of Echo do not have permits with DEQ to discharge stormwater. So now let's make sure we understand each other. Down Main Street, ODOT put that in, and that's a stormwater drain. Mike and I have talked about this quite a bit. It's supposed to dump out on the river, and I think it kind of does. And that's how the ODOT brought me the designs for it. Mike got them, and we were looking at them that way. But everywhere else in town, that's why we get Lake Echo everywhere during major rains, because we had no drainage, right? We have a high water table, we have no drainage. The closer you get to the river, the worse it gets. But in the new places, like up at Northgate is a very good example. Everything like the truck where the turn lanes will come in and the ADA sidewalks and all that, there'll be those swells that are gonna be in there that'll have the rock in there and then grass planted on top of them. And so those vegetation on there to take all of that water out of there because we don't have any way of discharging stormwater. Does that make sense? We have to come up with ways to naturally do that.
Changing the wrong spot.
No, you're good. It can be confusing. Yes. Well, you know, when you build on slopes up there where Chad's at, I mean, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if there's French drains and things up there that are underneath some of those properties in the backyards. I know we've got French drains in the golf course. So, you know, where we've got water that stands. So, right down.
Sometimes then in the wrong spot.
No, but I don't know, wrong spot, right spot, doesn't matter. Bringing it up is important. Thank you. So I appreciate that.
It is easy, like we talked, it is easy to get confused with which spot we're in.
Yes, exactly. And I think I want to kind of end it with just to reiterate something, if that's okay, Chad.
Sure.
Again, I think I said this 3 or 4 months ago, and my most vocal proponent is in the room, and I want to assure that we are, with any of the changes that are made or updates that are approved, we're still one person in one office, and we don't have a planning department, and we don't have a code enforcement. That may change someday, but right now, currently, for the next number of foreseeable years, Echo does not have code enforcement. Echo does not have a Gestapo running around with a ticket book and a taser to write building code violations. That just doesn't exist. And it's not going to exist for many, many years, if ever. And so having some leniency and some understanding and realizing that it's not going to be as strict as it might sound or read, I think is the reality of it. And so, you know, we have our folks in town that are our regular folks that, you know, push the buttons of the old code as it is, you know, 10-foot weeds and garbage and junk and stuff everywhere. And we do have some code that's still in there currently. And we usually send out letters and ask folks to clean up the weeds. And I would say 75 to 80% of the time, it's handled quickly and with not complaining, and a Meta writes them. Peggy wrote them before, and we get very few pushbacks. We've had, how many tickets have we had in the years that you've been here? Like 2?
Yeah.
So we're not writing tickets. We're not getting those. We're not out there having that major enforcement and that, well, is Dave looking over my shoulder? Am I going to get busted? That just doesn't exist. I don't care.
You do write a lot of letters.
You do write a lot of letters, but we get a lot of
Most
compliance.
the
Yeah, and we get a lot of compliance. And so just keeping that in mind and that fearfulness of, well, we're going to have all these more rules. Well, we're going to have clarity in code, but we're not going to have any more buddy out there enforcing something. It just doesn't exist. Even if we want it, we don't have it. And so keeping that in mind and that fear factor down, I think is pretty important. So I just wanted to throw that out there as food for thought and the reality of the situation that we currently have and will have for some. That's just the reality of it. So that's all I have.
Okay. Then, I don't see that we have enough specific
Nope.
information. We have a couple of things that we need.
I recommend there's one more.
2 things to get clarity on, before we make the final decision.
Well, I want to be able to bring you clean
That
documents.
clean document, yeah.
We're bringing clean documents.
And so, we need to, does it adjourn the meeting and set a new?
No, we don't adjourn the meeting. We can hold the meeting open
Right.
and we move it to the next date and time.
We continue the hearing to another date, that's what it is. I was looking for the right word. Continue the hearing to a future date and time. I suggest We don't do it around Christmas.
But we have a work session, we have a regular work session scheduled on the 27th of January. And we could change that to a public hearing, and then we don't have to add any more meetings to the month. May I suggest that, because we have our regular council meeting on the 13th, and that one's gonna be very busy. We have some big contracts to go over, to discuss, and you guys are gonna have probably questions, and that's gonna take a lot of time. So could, it may not, maybe if I do my job, it won't be as, but they're big packets, so. With the 27th, it's currently on our schedule for
How
our
does
work
that,
session.
how does that, if we, let's say on the 27th, we do end up, having a vote to
Move forward.
this forward,
Then we go, then we have to have an ordinance, there'll be the ordinance thing,
would it give enough time for the ordinance to be put in place by the February?
I'll ask her, it might have to be later in February, but might be the
Well,
work
if
session
we do,
time.
then we could have the meeting, say on the 20th, the hearing on the 20th.
You could, and then we just not have a work session, right? Because we don't need to have that many meetings.
Well, there's public notice time and things like that that we need to have out.
Yeah, we have to notice certain things.
I don't wanna put Dave under the gun any more than we.
So we could do the 20th if you wanna bag the 27th and just not.
Yeah, I would think the 20th. The 13th is our council meeting, and then we do the 20th. How does the council? 19th is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so I think you guys are closed that day, correct?
Yes.
So the 20th, what do you guys think about the 20th?
Good for me.
Good for you, okay? And we'll try to get you out before 9 o'clock. So you get to work, or do you want to get out of work?
Is it,
Just gotta give me a hard time. Hopefully, final.
so we 20th or 27th? The 27th would be in order for us, hey guys, the problem is, I can't write all this myself. We need a little bit of time to get all that public use document. The 27th is what she's asking.
Oh, okay, well, if Carla's, if that works better for her.
Just for her and I to get all the work, all the documents done. Plus, it's gonna take us a little bit of a lift to get the public use.
Because the
language.
10th. First reading of the ordinance,
Maybe.
of February.
I don't know. That's the cart before the horse. Let's just get
Okay.
one thing down first. Let's do the 27th as a public hearing, right? Can we do that? Will that work for everybody? And that gives us enough time. It gives us a month to get everything done.
27th. Yeah, sorry, no, Carla, sorry.
That works. That works for me too. That gives us enough time.
And it works for me Tuesday night.
And you guys may be doing interviews in January too. I did get 3 decent, we had a great conversation today. So we might have a couple, 3 candidates already in the queue. So, I'm hoping to get a few more and send you 5 or 6. So
Okay.
we did a whole bunch of review today together, just kind of let them look at it and
So Janie,
Do
does that
that.
work for you? The 27th? Tammy, does that work for you? Okay, and Chris? Okay, very well then.
We're not gonna do the
We need
20,
a-
right? Not 20?
No.
no 20. No 20, yeah, that's too soon. I wondered if she was gonna yell at me, so.
Well, that's all right.
Here.
We can handle it. Okay, so then I need a motion for continue the public hearing to January 27th, 6 o'clock at the City Hall.
So moved.
Okay?
I'll second.
Okay.
Oh, they tied. That was a
Well,
tie.
Jane just barely beat her.
Oh, okay.
She wanted to make the motion originally, and Richard beat her. She must have booked this. So, Richard made a motion to, continue the public hearing to January 20th,
27.
27th, excuse me, thank you. I'm looking right at the time, I got my calendar. So Richard made a motion to continue the public hearing to January 27th at 6 o'clock at Echo City Hall. Janie seconded that. Maria, your vote.
Yes.
Janie, your vote.
Yes.
Tammy, your vote.
Yes.
Richard, your vote. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
We'll try our best to get you all the documents and the maps and everything else ready to go by then. I think I can get the maps and the comprehensive plan pretty quick. I think it's the development code could take a little longer. Thanks, Gina.
See you.
Did you get your cards? Did we get the cards from her? They get turned into us?
Yeah.
Okay.